Railroads run on parallel ribbons of steel, but the miracle iron and carbon combination which makes this and much of our modern world possible simply would not happen if the raw materials could not make it to the mill. The Lake Superior region of the Great Lakes is home to some of the most productive iron ore deposits in the world. The Missabe and Marquette iron ranges combine for the vast majority of U.S. iron ore production, and almost all of it rides to Lake Superior by rail and then hits the water for transport by the majestic ships which sail on the great inland seas. At Sault Ste Marie, the Algoma Steel Mill is located right at the heart of the iron ore shipping trade, just up the St. Mary's River from the Soo Locks, through which the iron ore boats pass down from Lake Superior. Yet the Algoma Mill receives much of its ore by the all-rail route, ore that never floats. Originating at the Cleveland Cliffs Tilden Mine in the Marquette Iron Range, Canadian National teams up with the Lake Superior and Ishpeming to furnish between 45 and 70 iron ore hoppers daily year-round, while the lake freighters are forced to lay up each winter. The 155-mile haul, as the crow flies, takes the ore on a ride with 4 different trains in a continual round-the-clock railroad iron ore conveyor belt we will examine in this edition of Pure Michigan Trains, presented by the Thornapple River Rail Series.
CN 2630, that one's shut down, fuel conservation. 0 by 46, 1823 on the tons, 2389 on the feet. Increase rate of copy, over.
Like any other train, the daily run of CN's U-745 begins with permission to depart its origin from an authorized rail traffic controller. For the dark, unsignaled territory of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, this means copying a track authority from CN's Desk 12 out of Homewood, Illinois. With the requisite paperwork copied and the yard crew in the clear, the engineer gets things moving from the cab of the 5451 and EMD SD60 locomotive. They're heading timetable south from Gladstone Yard on former Soo Line rails, but will circumnavigate Escanaba to end up heading north on C&W rails for Marquette. Gladstone Yard is the central hub of the all-rail ore cycle, with the U-745 making the daily turn to Marquette, while a pair of over-the-road manifests complete the cycle to Sault Ste. Marie, as we'll see in the next edition of this series. Moments after departing Gladstone, the train flies over the Escanaba River on this Warren Deck truss bridge built in 1901 for the Soo Line Railroad. Due to the history of railroad consolidation here in Escanaba, the U-745 actually passes under the main line to Marquette before crossing the river here at Larch, since the main line north was built by the C&W, not the Soo line. Today CN owns it all, but since there is no connector in the northeast quadrant, the train takes a giant circle around Escanaba to get heading north on the right rails. In this airborne view of the river crossing, we can also spot the flyover of the Escanaba and Lake Superior main line into Wells, which is now used exclusively to service their Escanaba-based railcar repair shops. The interchange tracks remain in service, providing one of the several connections between the two remaining railroads here in Escanaba. Algoma Junction marks the spot where the former Soo line terminates into the former Chicago and Northwestern Upper Peninsula main line. This Y was constructed following the combination of the two roads in this area during the Wisconsin Central era, allowing for the elimination of the redundant Soo line west of here. Heading west on the normal route takes one towards Powers and ultimately Green Bay, Wisconsin, while taking the left-hand turn sets trains up to head north for the Marquette Iron Range. The engineer makes a smooth, controlled stop just short of the switch, allowing the conductor to dismount and realign the points for movement, entering the southern limits of the Marquette Range subdivision. After a short eastward jog through Escanaba, the U-745 finds another Y at Wells at the north end of the former iron ore yard, a spot which until recently was quite a busy place. The C&W in particular moved a lot of ore through the port here on Lake Michigan, shipping ore from both the Iron Mountain and Marquette regions. Alas, the yard has been closed since 2017 due to the closure of the Empire mine on the LS&I, leaving the dock with no more ore to move for the first time since the mid-1800s. Crossing back over to the north side of the Escanaba River and back over the majestic sub marks the end of the Escanaba Circle Tour. 60 miles of wide open track now lie ahead, with the next operational concerns at Partridge Yard and the LS&I. After a brief summer, a wet fall is the traditional precursor to exceptionally snowy winters up here. Just one such autumn drizzle is underway, with the distinctive 5-headlight arrangement of a B-Call C40-8M leading the way. As we've seen, the standard locomotive complement for the U745 is a pair of whatever 6 axles the CN has available. However, it isn't unheard of to run it with just a single locomotive when necessary. This day finds the 2898 doing the honors solo, radiator first. The railroad and Michigan State Highway 35 quickly find themselves running parallel, an arrangement that will last until Little Lake, making it easy to keep up with trains along this segment of the railroad. At Brampton, the disused passing siding is a reminder of the line's busier ore hauling days, when C&W trains led by Baby Baldwin trainmasters often met here and at Little Lake with the ore shuttles. Today, both trains on the line operate as turns out of Gladstone on opposite sides of the clock, sharing the same locomotive power, effectively making meets impossible in today's operating practice. At Beaver, these 8-inch lights and mechanical bells still protect a county road crossing long after most of their contemporaries have been cut down. The oncoming edition of the U-745 is a great example of the train's secondary cargo: soda ash, bentonite clay, and sodium hydroxide, all of which are consumed by the Tilden mine in the iron ore pellet making process. While hunters harvest many thousands of white-tailed deer annually from these woodlands, contact with the front end of a freight train is also typically lethal for them. Thoroughly picked over by the vultures and possums by this point, there isn't much left of this railroaded specimen. More 8-inch lights still stand at Trombley, though now equipped with the electric bells ubiquitous of the contemporary railroading scene. A couple of months later at the same spot, the aspen trees are at the peak of their color cycle long after most other trees have shed their leaves to prepare for the long northern winter. In the vicinity of Rock, the trees between the highway and railroad have been cleared out, allowing for some great pacing action as the trains storm through town, on this day with a Warren Canadian cab to be called -9 in the lead. Another day finds a much more modern pair of SD-70M-2s steaming north under clear skies on a chilly spring afternoon. Just north of McFarland, the Highway Department decided that M35 needed to be on the other side of the railroad, creating a significant grade crossing here. More 8-inch lights guard the railroad in Little Lake, home to a maintenance of way base and the other disused passing siding. With all 5 headlights poking through the drizzle, it's easy to know that another B-call locomotive is leading the way. Just south of the now decommissioned K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base, the M94 bridge provides this view of the broad curve constructed to bypass around the south end of the airbase when the runway was extended to over 12,000 feet in length to support B-52 bomber operations during the Cold War. M553 provides another overhead look just west of the airbase. Just beyond the trees here was where the Air Force kept their B-52s on 15-minute alert, armed and ready for Armageddon throughout much of the Cold War. The flat terrain ends as the railroad reaches Goose Lake, entering the rolling and hilly Marquette Iron Range. The lake provides a flat and easy entrance into the area for the railroad, saving on curves and gradients. As they are now approaching Partridge Yard, the conductor will radio ahead to the LS&I control operator, who will inform them of which tracks are open at Partridge. This also serves as a heads up to the LS&I that the U-745 is on approach, so that the operator can plan his next moves accordingly. The yard at Partridge is really just a pair of mile-long sidings, providing space to interchange and build trains headed out of the Iron Range. It's where the CN's regional locals exchange traffic with each other, and is also where the LS&I drops off the iron ore hoppers for the U-745 once they're loaded. In order to reach Eagle Mills, the U-745 will leave CN territory behind and use a combination of jointly operated railroad and the LS&I ore sub between Algoma Junction and Eagle Mills West via Eagle Mills Junction. Before they depart the Partridge Yard limits, the U-745 calls the LS&I operator once more for permission to proceed, which is typically given without delay, assuming there aren't any of the LS&I's own trains in the way. At Palmerline Junction, a trio of searchlight signals protect this remotely controlled power-operated switch, with the LS&I main to the Empire and Tilden mines branching off to the right, and the CN main line to Escanaba headed off to the left. This is the only remaining segment of centralized traffic control in the Upper Peninsula, owing to the fact that upwards of 20 trains might trod these rails a day if the LS&I is especially busy. Just a few hundred yards later, Eagle Mills Junction splits the line again. The closest track continues towards Ishpeming and ultimately Lawns, while the other takes trains to Eagle Mills. Now headed compass east in the final mile to Eagle Mills, this edition is rolling under the last rays of the late October sun. The last obstacle before Eagle Mills is another crossing of M35. By now, the LS&I operator has issued his permission to proceed into the yard, along with instructions on where to tie down the inbound cars. Beyond the Carp River Trestle, a cut of the LS&I's ore pellet reclaim cars stand by with waste pellets sucked up from the track, and the largely demolished Pioneer Pellet Mill sits silently off to the right. Flying further overhead of the yard, the large car and locomotive shop is home to the railroad's mechanical forces, and one can see all the way to Lake Superior on this clear fall evening. Typically, the inbound U-745 is short enough to clear into one of the tracks here at Eagle Mills, but on occasion too much inbound clay necessitates doubling over to an adjacent track. As is customary for any train making a double here, the operator lines them into the pellet plant spur for headroom, keeping the nearby county highway open to motorists. With the inbound train put away for the LS&I to play with in the morning, it's a quick, light power move back to Partridge to pick up their outbound loaded consist. Before we follow the remainder of the U-745's daily duties, we return to Eagle Mills West the following morning to catch the LS&I's side of the move, which comes daily in the form of the 7-waiter job. As suggested by its title, the 7-waiter goes on duty each morning at 7 a.m., often departing shortly thereafter with hoppers for Tilden. A well-known aspect of the LS&I are its remaining GE U-30C and C-30-7 locomotives, which sometimes get the call to handle the all-rail ore. At Eagle Mills Junction, we find the C-30-7s leading the way to Tilden, squealing around the exceptionally tight 10-degree curve through the rock cut. Beyond Palmer Line Junction at Rolling Mill Road, we caught up with another addition, this time behind the twin U-30Cs. Beyond Empire Junction, the branch quickly finds the now closed Empire Mine before curving westwards towards the younger Tilden Complex. There, the train is loaded with iron ore using front-end loaders, and by lunchtime is typically ready to head for Partridge. On the way back north, we pick up their day at the Empire Mine, which hasn't produced a pellet since August of 2016 and stopped shipping the following October. The main pit off to the left has been slowly filling with water since the end of production and is due to ultimately become Michigan's deepest lake. Beyond the pit, the railroad passes through the first of two tunnels built to allow mining trucks to pass over the railroad, and then continues between the mountains of overburden left over from the mining process. Beyond the overburden at Empire Junction, they proceed through the south leg of the Y, returning the train to Partridge Yard. Back at Partridge, we found CN's L549 working to assemble their southbound train en route to Gladstone. As previously mentioned, the CN local based out of Ishpeming exchanges its traffic with the rest of the railroad here, so today the L549 has a healthy cut of traffic from further up the line. While the CN crew was performing their air test, the waiter trundled in with the all-rail loads, making for a somewhat rare meeting of two trains here in Partridge. However, it wasn't long before the CN job departed, with its characteristic consist of copper and nickel organs from the Eagle mine, wood chips from Lawns, and the empty clay hoppers from the Tilden mine. By this point, the waiter's conductor had finished tying down the requisite number of handbrakes on the ore cars, so they were quick to cut away and start their own return to Eagle Mill's light power. Later that evening, the CN dutifully returns to pick up the loads. It doesn't take a skilled pair of railroaders long to tie on and cut in the air to start charging the brake pipe for departure. They've still got to complete their full air test, however, so it takes a while before they're on the pole for Gladstone. With the air test completed satisfactorily and the conductor back on the point, the hogger releases the brakes and starts the return pull to Gladstone, retracing their earlier path. Now loaded with several thousand tons of fresh Marquette Iron Range ore, the U-745 steams south at K.I. Sawyer. By noon the next day, they'll be on the next train to Sault Ste. Marie, subject of the next edition of Pure Michigan Trains, as we admire how CN serves the North with their all-rail ore trains. Thanks for watching this edition of the Thornapple River Rail Series. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more railroading action. Be sure to click through to the second part of this saga as we set off from Gladstone bound for Canada and the Algoma Steel Works.